Marcus lifted the rifle with two fingers like it was garbage. Somebody left on his counter by mistake. Rust flaked onto the glass surface. The wood stock had a crack running straight down the middle, deep enough to slip a dime into. The metal looked like it had been pulled from a swamp and left to rot in someone's basement for 30 years. Maybe longer. "Ma'am, this is scrap metal. Probably blow up in your hands if you even tried to fire it." From somewhere near the back of the shop, a customer laughed. Low and knowing, the kind of laugh that said he'd seen this before. Old folks bringing in family junk, thinking it was treasure. The woman standing across from Marcus didn't move, didn't smile, didn't break eye contact. Her face was lined but sharp, cheekbones that could cut glass, eyes that looked at him the way a jeweler looks at a stone, assessing value beneath surface flaws. "You might want to check the serial number first." Marcus almost laughed. He'd been appraising firearms since he was 16 years old. Worked weekends at his grandfather's shop all through high school. Took over the place when the old man died 3 years ago. He knew junk when he saw it. This rifle was junk, but something about the way she said it made him pause. Not the words themselves, the tone. Quiet, certain, like she knew something he didn't and was waiting for him to catch up. He grabbed a brass brush from the workbench behind him. Bottle of Hops No. 9 solvent. Poured some onto a rag. The smell hit him immediate, chemical and sharp. Smell of every Sunday morning he'd spent in this shop with his grandfather. "Fine, let's see what we got here." He started scrubbing the receiver where the serial number would be stamped. The brush made a scratching sound against oxidized metal. Black flakes and rust-red dust scattered across the counter like tiny dead insects. The solvent cut through corrosion slowly. Numbers began appearing beneath the grime. Marcus scrubbed harder. More numbers emerged. His hands slowed. Something was wrong with the format. The prefix didn't match any civilian production model he recognized. It was alphanumeric instead of pure numeric. And it ended with a dash and a letter. -X. He stopped scrubbing, stared at the numbers now visible in the clean section. GX1847-X. He'd never seen a serial formatted like that. Not in 10 years of working firearms. Not in any of the reference books his grandfather kept on the shelves in the back office. From across the counter, the customer who'd laughed earlier leaned forward. Old guy, maybe 70, collector type, came in twice a week looking at estate sale finds. "What did you find?" Marcus didn't answer. He pulled his phone from his pocket, opened the firearms database app he used for appraisals, entered the serial number. The app searched for 3 seconds, then returned the results. No match. He tried a different database, military surplus registry. Entered the serial again. Waited. The screen loaded. Restricted access. What the hell? Marcus set the phone down, walked to the back office without saying anything. The office was barely bigger than a closet, shelves packed with binders and reference books and old catalogs. He pulled down a thick red volume from the second shelf. United States Military, Small Arms Serial Numbers, 1945 to 1985. Pages worn from years of use. He flipped through sections, found the page on serial formatting, scanned rows of text and footnotes. Near the bottom of page 347, he found it. Small print, easy to miss. Serial designations ending in -X-Y or -Z were reserved for experimental or classified procurement programs. Records sealed under National Security Directive 47B, contact DOD, Historical Archives for Freedom of Information Act requests. Marcus read it twice, felt something cold move through his chest. He returned to the counter. The woman hadn't moved, still standing in the exact same position, hands resting flat on the glass, watching him with that unnerving stillness. He picked up the rifle again, this time carefully, examined it with different eyes, professional assessment instead of dismissive glance. "Where did you get this?" His tone had changed entirely. Less cocky, more careful, It was issued to me. The old collector customer laughed again. Issued lady women weren't even allowed in combat units back then. The woman turned her head slowly toward him, said nothing, just looked. The silence that followed was heavier than any response could have been. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable without knowing why. Marcus ignored the exchange. He was looking at the rifle now, really looking. Grabbed a magnifying glass from the drawer, examined the barrel threading, not factory standard, custom precision work, high-end machining, the kind you'd see on competition rifles or specialized military applications. He checked the trigger assembly, match-grade components, adjusted for accuracy, light pull weight, crisp break. He ran his fingers along the bolt, felt wear patterns that suggested use with a suppressor, long-term use. The stock was split, but beneath the damage, he could see faint engravings. Letters scratched into the wood by hand, then deliberately scratched over. Obscured, but not completely erased. This was built for long-range precision work. Marcus spoke quietly, almost to himself. Match barrel, custom load specifications. This wasn't infantry issue. This was specialized. He trailed off, looked at the woman. She finished his sentence. Sniper platform, Operation Brushfire, 1973 to 77. Laos and Cambodia. Every person in the shop stopped moving. The old collector's mouth hung open. Two other customers near the shotgun rack turned to stare. Marcus felt his pulse in his temples. Brushfire was covert, counterinsurgency. That program's still classified. Most of it is. The woman's voice stayed flat, emotionless. Most of us are too, dead or erased. As she spoke, Marcus noticed things he'd missed before. The way she stood, weight balanced evenly on both feet, shoulders squared. When a car backfired outside on the highway, her head turned toward the sound with mechanical precision. Tracked the direction, assessed, dismissed, returned to neutral. Reflexes that didn't fade. She used language that felt wrong, coming from an elderly woman in a rural gun shop. Suppress fire mission, windage calculation, cold bore zero, technical terminology that belonged to operators, not grandmothers. The old collector found his voice. Who are you? You can call me Deja. Not I am, not my name is. You can call me. Deja, what? Marcus asked. Just Deja. Marcus pushed the rifle back across the counter toward her. Look, I don't know what this is, but if it's connected to classified operations, I legally can't work on it. Can't even appraise it without proper authorization. I'm not asking you to work on it. I'm asking you what it's worth. Marcus laughed, nervous now. Worth if this is authentic, if it's one of maybe a dozen surviving examples from a ghost program, collectors would pay 6 figures. Maybe more. Museums would want it. Then sell it for me. The collector stepped closer. Why now? Why bring it in after all these years? Deja looked at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were pale gray, almost colorless, like fog. Because all these years, nobody was looking for it. Now someone is. As she said this, her right hand moved unconsciously to her left forearm, touched it through the fabric of her jacket sleeve. Brief contact, then away. The motion lasted less than a second, but Marcus saw it. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen, text message from an unknown number. Who submitted serial inquiry GX1847-X at 11:34 a.m. Reply ASAP. Marcus felt cold water run down his spine. He picked up the phone, read the message again, looked at Deja. She was watching him. No surprise on her face, no concern. He showed her the screen. She read it. Her expression didn't change. You should close early today, and maybe don't answer that. The collector looked between them. What is going on? Marcus didn't know how to answer. He stared at the text message, at the rifle, at the woman who called herself Deja. His hands were shaking slightly. He pressed them flat against the counter to stop the tremor. The phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This is a national security matter. Provide contact information for individual who presented firearm serial GX1847-X. Compliance is not optional. Marcus set the phone down like it had become hot. Deja remained perfectly still. She hadn't moved since placing the rifle on the counter, hadn't shifted weight, hadn't looked away. The bell above the door chimed. Marcus looked up. The two customers near the shotgun rack were leaving. Their faces showed confusion and discomfort. They left quickly without saying goodbye. The collector was still standing there, staring at Deja like he was trying to solve a puzzle written in a language he didn't speak. The space seemed to contract around them. Walls closer, air thicker. Marcus picked up the rifle one more time, turned it over in his hands, looked at the serial number now fully visible beneath the clean section. GX1847-X. 8 characters that apparently meant something to people who operated in basements of buildings that didn't appear on maps. He set it down gently. You're not selling this, are you? Not a question. A statement? No, then why bring it here? Deja smiled. Thin, no warmth. Because someone needed to verify what it was. Someone who would document it. Someone who would search databases and trigger alarms. Someone who would create a record that this rifle exists and that I'm still alive. You wanted them to know. I wanted witnesses. When they come, and they will come, I needed people who could verify what happened here. What you saw. What you confirmed. The phone buzzed a third time. Marcus didn't pick it up. He could see the message preview on the lock screen. Federal agents en route to your location. Do not leave premises. Do not destroy evidence. Await arrival. He looked at Deja. They're coming here. I know. When soon? The collector backed away from the counter. I think I should go. No. Deja said it quietly, but it carried weight. You should stay. You're a witness too. The collector froze. This is insane. I run a gun shop. I appraise firearms. I don't get involved in whatever this is. You got involved the moment you cleaned that serial number. There's no uninvolving yourself now. Outside, the sound of tires on gravel, a vehicle pulling into the parking lot. Marcus looked through the front window. Black SUV, tinted windows, government plates. They're here. Deja didn't turn to look, kept her eyes on Marcus. When they ask you questions, tell them the truth. What you saw, what you verified. Nothing more. What are they going to do to you that depends on how smart they are? The vehicle doors opened. 2 men stepped out. Mid-40s, athletic builds, wearing civilian clothes that somehow screamed federal agent. Wrong shoes, wrong watches, wrong way of scanning the environment. They walked toward the shop entrance with purpose. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't think. His mind had gone blank except for one repeating thought. What have I gotten into? The bell above the door chimed. The 2 men entered. They moved like operators, controlled, aware, eyes sweeping the shop in systematic patterns. The first man smiled, pleasant, professional. Afternoon, we're looking for someone who might have inquired about a specific serial number today. Marcus opened his mouth. No sound came out. The second man's gaze landed on the rifle lying on the counter. His expression flickered. Recognition, then careful neutrality. That's interesting hardware. Mind if I ask where you got it? Deja stood from where she'd been leaning against the wall, moved slowly, deliberately, every motion controlled. Both men turned toward her, saw an elderly woman in canvas and denim, dismissed her immediately, looked back at Marcus. Sir, we're going to need you to hand over any documentation related to that firearm and provide contact information for whoever brought it in. You're not taking anything. Deja's voice was quiet but different now. Command underneath. Authority that didn't ask permission. The first man barely glanced at her. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please step outside. GX1847-X, issued October 1973, returned February 1977. That rifle has been in my possession for 49 years. You want documentation? I've got 49 years of it. The second man stopped moving, turned to look at her, really looked this time. His eyes scanned her face, her posture, the way she held herself. Something changed in his expression. What was your designation? He asked it carefully, like he already knew the answer but needed to hear it confirmed. Crosswind 7. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The second man's hand moved reflexively, started to rise toward his head in what looked like the beginning of a salute. He caught himself halfway, lowered it slowly. Jesus Christ, he whispered it. The first agent pulled out his phone, spoke rapidly into it, stepped toward the back of the shop for privacy, but his voice carried anyway. Yes, sir. Crosswind 7. Alive. Confirmed. The rifle is here. Serial authenticated. Yes, sir. I'm looking at her right now. The collector looked between Deja and the agents. His mouth opened and closed twice before words came out. You're saying she was a sniper for the government? The second agent didn't answer. He was still watching Deja like she might vanish if he looked away. How is this possible? We have documentation of your death. Witnesses. A burial record. Deja rolled up her left sleeve slowly, deliberately. A scar became visible, long and jagged, ran from her wrist almost to her elbow. Old surgical scar, the kind left by shrapnel removal. The tissue was raised and discolored. Decades of healing had faded it but not erased it. Shrapnel, Cambodian border, February 12, 1977. Helicopter extraction under fire. Lost 2 teammates that day. Killed 11 hostiles at 900 meters with iron sights because the scope was shattered. She pointed at the rifle on the counter. That barrel, that rifle, that mission. The second agent's hands were trembling slightly. You're on the memorial wall, Building C. Langley. I've walked past your name 100 times, probably still misspelled. Deja said it flatly. No humor. The first agent returned, ended his call, looked at his partner with an expression that mixed confusion and something close to fear. They want us to bring her in, secure location, immediate debriefing. Deja let her sleeve fall back down. Covered the scar. No, the first agent blinked. Excuse me, I didn't surface after 50 years to get disappeared again. That rifle exists. The serial is documented. Multiple witnesses in this room. If I vanish, questions get asked. So here's what happens instead. You leave, I keep the rifle, and when your superiors figure out they can't erase me twice, they can decide whether they want the story told quietly or loudly. The second agent looked at his partner. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Years of working together compressed into a glance. The second agent turned back to Deja. This time his hand completed the motion it had started earlier. Full military salute, crisp, held. Deja did not return it, just nodded once. The agents moved toward the door. At the threshold, the second agent paused. Looked back. For what it's worth, ma'am, thank you for your service, even if nobody was supposed to know about it. The door closed behind them. Nobody moved. The shop had become a vacuum. Sound felt wrong. Time felt suspended. The collector exhaled, long and shaky. That just happened. That actually just happened. Marcus couldn't speak. His mind was trying to process information that didn't fit into any framework he understood. The woman standing in his shop had been dead for nearly 50 years. Except she wasn't dead. She was here, and federal agents had just saluted her. Deja walked to the workbench, began gathering the rifle parts, wrapped them back in the wool blanket with careful practice movements. I lied earlier. I'm not selling it, just needed someone to verify what it was. Now it's verified. Marcus found his voice. Wait, why now? Why after all this time? Deja stopped rapping, stood still for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight that hadn't been there before. Because they're dying. The men who ran brush fire, the generals who signed the orders, the intelligence officers who planned the missions. They're old now, dying, taking the truth with them. I wanted someone to know that before the last of them goes, there's still one of us left who remembers. The collector stepped closer. Did you really do what you said? Deja picked up the wrapped rifle, held it against her chest like something precious. 9 confirmed kills, 11 probable, all enemy combatants, all in defense of teammates who never made it home. She touched the rifle through the blanket. This was my service. Nobody asked if I belonged there. The enemy sure as hell knew I did. She walked toward the door. The bell chimed as she opened it. Marcus found himself moving. Wait, Deja stopped, didn't turn around. What happens now? That depends on how many people believe you and how loud you are willing to tell the story. She left. The door closed. The bell chimed again. Marcus and the collector stood in silence, staring at the empty doorway. On the workbench, something caught the light. Marcus walked over, found a single brass casing sitting where the rifle had been. She must have left it there while wrapping the weapon. He picked it up, turned it over in his fingers, stamped on the base. 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO. 1974, concrete evidence, undeniable history, a shell casing fired half a century ago yet somehow still warm to the touch. The collector moved beside him, looked at the casing. You believe her? Marcus set the casing down gently. Yeah, I do. What are you going to do? I don't know. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Do not discuss this incident with anyone. National security protocols in effect. Violation will result in federal prosecution. Marcus showed it to the collector. The man read it, laughed, nervous and high-pitched. They're threatening you now. Apparently, you're going to listen. Marcus looked at the brass casing, at the photograph tucked behind the register, at the locked filing cabinet in the corner that suddenly seemed important in a way it hadn't been an hour ago. I don't know. The collector left 20 minutes later, said he needed a drink, maybe several, maybe an entire bottle. Marcus locked the door after him, flipped the sign to closed even though it was only 1 in the afternoon. He stood in the empty shop. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The smell of gun solvent and metal polish hung in the air like it always did. Everything looked the same. Nothing was the same. Marcus walked to the filing cabinet, stared at it. The lock was old, probably could be picked with the right tools. He had the tools, grew up learning locks as part of Gunsmith training, understanding mechanisms, how things fit together. He didn't pick the lock. Instead, he opened the drawer beneath the cash register, found the spare key ring his father kept there. 7 keys, most he recognized. Building keys, gun safe keys, display case keys, one he didn't recognize. Small, brass, looked like it fit a filing cabinet. Marcus walked to the cabinet, tried the key. It turned, the lock clicked, the drawer slid open. Inside were files, manila folders, dozens of them, organized by year. Labels written in precise handwriting that looked like his grandfather's script. Deployment records, requisition orders, mission summaries. Marcus pulled out a folder at random, opened it. Weapons requisition form dated April 1974. Requesting delivery of specialized ammunition. 7.62 NATO match grade. Suppressed load specifications. Delivery location listed as Firebase Hotel. Coordinates redacted. Authorization signature illegible, but stamped with a seal Marcus didn't recognize. He pulled another folder. Mission debrief, August 1975. Target eliminated at long range. Positive identification confirmed. Team extraction successful. No casualties. Operator designation, Crosswind 7. Marcus set the folder down. His hands were shaking again. His grandfather's shop had not just been a gun shop. It had been a depot, a supply point for covert operations. His grandfather had been part of this, part of Brushfire. The photograph behind the register. Marcus pulled it out, looked at it again with new understanding. 7 figures in uniform standing beside wooden crates in a jungle clearing. Faces obscured by sun glare or age or both. One figure slightly shorter than the others. Posture he now recognized. Deja, 49 years ago, standing with her team. Marcus turned the photograph over, handwriting on the back, faded but legible. Crosswind Unit, April 1975 after Firebase Hotel resupply. May they all come home. They had not all come home. Marcus sat down at the counter, put his head in his hands, tried to process information that kept expanding beyond his ability to contain it. His phone rang, actual call this time. Unknown number, he answered. Hello, Mr. Mercer. My name is Colonel Reginald Thompson, retired. I understand you had an encounter today that raised some questions. The voice was older, authoritative, military cadence, even in retirement. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. You're allowed to listen. The woman who visited your shop was part of a program that saved American lives. Operators who went places we couldn't officially go, did things we couldn't officially acknowledge. When the program ended, they were given a choice: disappear into new identities with full support or face congressional hearings that would have destroyed them and exposed methods we still use today. Most chose to disappear, and now she's surfacing. Because we're dying. The men who know what really happened, what those operators sacrificed. We're old. Cancer, heart disease, time. The truth dies with us if someone doesn't speak. Why me? Why bring the rifle to me? Because your grandfather ran supply operations for Brushfire. Because your shop has documentation that proves the program existed. Because you're young enough to remember and tell the story after we're all gone. Marcus closed his eyes. What do you want from me? Tell the truth when the time comes. When it's safe. Tell people what you verified today. That the rifle exists. That the cereal is real. That the woman who carried it is real. What if they don't believe me? They will. We're working on declassification. Partial, limited, but enough. Within a few months, some of Brushfire will be public record. When that happens, your testimony will matter. You'll be a witness to history. And if I refuse, then good people stay erased. And that would be a shame. The line went dead. Marcus sat motionless. The space around him felt like it was pressing in. Too small, too quiet. He looked at the brass casing on the workbench, at the photograph, at the open filing cabinet full of secrets his father had told him were nothing important. His entire life had been built on a foundation of half-truths and comfortable lies. The gun shop was just a gun shop. His grandfather was just a businessman. The old rotary phone was just decoration. The filing cabinet was just old inventory records. All lies. Or not lies exactly. Omissions. Things left unsaid because saying them would have shattered the illusion of normalcy. Marcus stood, walked to the rotary phone hanging on the wall. Cream-colored plastic gone yellow with age. In 643 days, it had never rung. Now it felt like it was about to. Like the weight of expectation could will it into action. It did not ring. He walked back to the counter, picked up the brass casing, held it up to the light. The metal caught the fluorescent glow. The stamped numbers were crisp despite being 50 years old. Quality manufacturing, military precision. Someone had fired this round. Someone had loaded it into a rifle. Someone had aimed and calculated when and distance and breathing and squeezed the trigger. Someone had watched through a scope as the bullet traveled 900 meters and ended a life. That someone was an elderly woman who moved slowly and spoke quietly and had been officially dead for 49 years. Marcus set the casing down, picked up his phone, opened the notes application, started typing. November 14th, woman identifying herself as Deja brought rifle to shop. Serial GX1847-X, verified as experimental military sniper platform. Database search triggered federal response. 2 agents arrived, confirmed woman's identity as Crosswind 7. Operator and classified program, Operation Brushfire. Woman displayed knowledge of military operations. Specific technical terminology. Visible shrapnel scar consistent with combat injury. Agents rendered salute before departing. He saved the note, backed it up to cloud storage, sent a copy to his personal email. Documentation, evidence, testimony. The bell above the door chimed. Marcus looked up, heart racing, hand moving instinctively toward the pistol he kept under the register. An old man entered, 80s, moving with a cane, wore a faded army jacket, patches on the shoulders Marcus didn't recognize. The man looked around the shop. His eyes landed on the filing cabinet, on the photograph now sitting on the counter. On Marcus. You're the grandson. Not a question. A statement. Yes, your grandfather was a good man, helped us when nobody else would. Who are you? The man moved closer slowly, each step deliberate. You had a visitor today, woman with a rifle. How do you know that? Because I got a phone call an hour ago from someone who said Crosswind 7 was alive, and I had to see for myself if it was true. You know her? The old man nodded. Served with her. February 77. I was the pilot who extracted her team. Took ground fire on approach. She covered our landing from a ridge position. Never seen shooting like that. 11 targets, maybe 90 seconds. Perfect shots, every one. He looked at the photograph. That's us. That picture, I'm third from the left. Marcus picked up the photograph, looked at the figure the man indicated. Taller than the others, posture that suggested military bearing even through the blur. You were there. 4 tours. Most of them places I can't talk about. Most with people whose names I'm not supposed to remember. But I remember her. Crosswind 7. Best operator I ever flew for. Why are you here? Because if she's surfacing, it means something's happening. Declassification maybe. Recognition. And if that's coming, there are things you should know. Things about your grandfather. About what this place really was. The man reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope, yellow with age, sealed. Your grandfather gave me this in '78. Told me if anything ever happened to him, if anyone ever started asking questions about brush fire, I should give this to whoever was running the shop. Said they'd know what to do with it. He handed the envelope to Marcus. The seal was still intact. Marcus's grandfather's handwriting on the front. To whoever carries the name forward, what's in it? The truth, or as much of it as could be written down. Names, dates, operations, things that prove what happened, things that prove those operators were real. Why didn't you open it? Because it wasn't addressed to me, and because some truths are dangerous. Your grandfather knew that. He made sure the information survived, but stayed hidden until it was safe. The man turned toward the door, paused. Tell her I remember. Tell Crosswind 7 that Pelican 3 remembers, and that I'm glad she made it home. He left. The bell chimed, the door closed. Marcus stood holding the envelope. The paper felt fragile, like it might disintegrate if he gripped too hard. He set it on the counter, stared at it. Around him the shop continued its existence. Fluorescent lights humming, gun oil smell, afternoon sun slanting through the windows. Everything normal, everything changed. Marcus picked up the envelope, broke the seal. Inside were photographs, documents, handwritten notes, a ledger listing weapons and ammunition with dates and destinations, maps with coordinates marked, after-action reports typed on ancient typewriters, and a letter addressed to no one, signed by his grandfather. If you're reading this, someone finally asked the right questions. Someone finally started connecting pieces that were supposed to stay separated. Good. What we did was necessary. The operators who served in brush fire saved American lives. They operated in conditions that would break most people. They succeeded in missions that had no backup plans. And when the program ended, they were abandoned, given new names, new lives, told to forget. But some things shouldn't be forgotten. Some sacrifices deserve recognition, even if that recognition comes 50 years late. This shop was part of the supply chain. I provided weapons, ammunition, specialized equipment. I knew some of the operators, knew what they were doing even if I couldn't say it out loud. They were heroes, every one of them. If the time has come to tell their story, tell it right, tell it complete. Don't let politics or bureaucracy erase what they did. The envelope also contained a key, small, brass, different from the filing cabinet key. Attached to it was a note, safe deposit box, First National Bank, Knoxville, box 347, more documentation inside. Use when the time is right. Marcus set everything down, looked at the collection of evidence spread across the counter. Photographs of young soldiers in jungle fatigues, documents stamped classified and secret and eyes only. Names he didn't recognize but which carried weight anyway. His phone buzzed. Text message, Deja, the pilot came to see you. Good, you're starting to understand. When they announce declassification, you'll be ready. Thank you for believing. Marcus typed a response. Why me? Why involve me in this? The reply came quickly. Because your grandfather trusted you with his legacy, even if you didn't know it yet. Because you verified the truth when it would have been easier to dismiss it. Because witnesses matter. And because I'm tired of being dead. Marcus sat down, exhaustion hitting him like physical weight. The day had started normally. Coffee at 6, security check, cleaning display cases. Now he was holding evidence of classified operations and communicating with a woman who had been erased from history. The rotary phone rang. Harsh mechanical sound. Wrong for the modern world. Marcus jumped, stared at it. The sound continued. He stood, walked to it, picked up the receiver. Hello, static. Then a voice, male, older, formal. This line has been inactive for 38 years. If it's ringing now, it means someone activated the emergency protocol. Is this the grandson? Yes. Then listen carefully. Operation Brush Fire is being partially declassified. Public announcement in 6 weeks. Congressional hearing in 8 weeks. We need witnesses who can verify the program existed. People with documentation. People with credibility. Your grandfather set this up decades ago. A fail-safe. If the operators ever needed validation, this phone would ring. And whoever answered would become their advocate. Who is this? Someone who owes them everything. Be ready. When the hearing happens, you'll be called to testify. Bring the documentation. Bring the rifle serial verification. Bring the truth. The line went dead. Marcus set the receiver down. His hand was shaking. The shop had gone quiet again. That vacuum silence, like the building itself was holding its breath. He looked at everything spread across the counter. Evidence, testimony, truth. 6 weeks until public announcement. 8 weeks until congressional hearing. 8 weeks to prepare to tell the world about people who had been ghosts for 50 years. Marcus picked up the photograph one more time, studied the faces he could not quite see. The team standing in a jungle clearing beside wooden crates. Young people doing dangerous things in places they weren't supposed to be. One of them was still alive, still fighting, still demanding recognition. And now he was part of that fight whether he had chosen it or not. The brass casing caught the light again. Glinted, small and significant. A bullet fired 50 years ago that was still finding its target. Marcus closed the filing cabinet, gathered the documents from the envelope, locked them in the safe beneath the register. Tomorrow he would go to the bank, retrieve whatever was in box 347, start organizing evidence, start preparing testimony. Tonight, he would sit in the quiet shop and try to understand how his entire understanding of his family history had been rewritten in 6 hours. The photograph went back on the wall, properly framed now, labeled, honored. The brass casing went into a small display case, mounted on velvet, caption card beneath it, 7.62 NATO, 1974, Operation Brushfire, fired in defense of American lives, carried home by Crosswind 7. 6 weeks passed like water through fingers. Marcus spent most of that time in the back office of Mercer and Sons Firearms, organizing documentation that had been hidden for decades. The safe deposit box at First National Bank had contained exactly what his grandfather's note promised: mission reports with coordinates and casualty counts in target descriptions, deployment records showing rotation schedules and equipment requests, photographs of operators whose faces were finally clear instead of blurred by sun glare. Crosswind 7 was listed as Lieutenant Deja Imani Winters, 23 years old when she deployed in October 73, 27 when she vanished in March 77 after the program shut down. The photograph showed a young woman with sharp features and eyes that looked directly at the camera without flinching. In one image, she stood beside the rifle Marcus had cleaned. The metal wasn't rusted then. The wood wasn't split. It looked new and deadly and purposeful. She held it with both hands like it was an extension of her body. Marcus organized everything chronologically, built a timeline on the wall of the back office using push pins and string. October 73 to February 77. 42 missions documented, 9 confirmed eliminations, 11 probable. Target descriptions range from enemy officers to weapons caches to forward observers calling in artillery strikes. Most missions showed 0 friendly casualties. A few showed 1 or 2 wounded. 2 missions showed teammates killed in action. February 12, 77 showed Clarence Davis and Maurice Williams both listed as KYA during helicopter extraction under fire. Marcus read those reports 3 times, tried to imagine what it felt like to lose 2 people in one day, to keep fighting while bleeding, to make 11 perfect shots with iron sights while knowing your friends were already dead. He couldn't imagine it. The closest he'd come to violence was breaking up a fist fight outside a bar when he was 21. That had terrified him. What Deja had done was beyond his comprehension. The declassification announcement came on a Tuesday morning in January. Department of Defense press release. Brief and clinical. Operation Brushfire acknowledged as a limited counterinsurgency program conducted between 1973 and 77 in Southeast Asia. Personnel records partially unsealed. Congressional hearings scheduled for February 15th to review the program and consider formal recognition of operators. Marcus's phone rang within an hour. Colonel Reginald Thompson, the voice from 6 weeks ago. You've seen the announcement? Yes, sir. Hearing will require testimony from witnesses who can verify the program's existence independent of government records. You'll be called. Prepare a statement. Bring physical evidence. This is important. I'll be there. Good man, your grandfather would be proud. The call ended. Marcus sat in the quiet shop staring at the wall timeline. 42 missions, 9 confirmed, 11 probable, 2 teammates dead, 1 operator erased from history for 49 years. He started drafting his statement that afternoon. 3 days later, a package arrived at the shop. No return address. Inside was a letter from Deja, handwritten. Her script was precise, almost mechanical, like typing but done with a pen. Thank you for keeping faith. The rifle has been donated to the Smithsonian as promised. They're building an exhibit around it. Operation Brushfire Shadows in Service. Opens in March. You should come to the dedication. You earned that, you know. The letter included a photograph. Newer, showed the rifle under museum lighting, cleaned and preserved, displayed on a stand with a placard that read GX-1A 847-X sniper platform used in covert operations, 1973 to 77, carried by Lieutenant Deja Imani Winters Crosswind. 7, her name, her real name, no longer hidden. Marcus placed the photograph on the wall beside the old picture of the Crosswind unit. 2 images separated by 50 years. Same woman, different contexts. One hidden in shadow, one brought into light. Walking into the shop carried new weight. Customers still came in looking for ammunition or asking about used rifles, but Marcus no longer dismissed things based on appearance alone. He asked questions. He listened. He examined everything carefully before making judgments. The old collector came by twice a week, never mentioned what happened that day in November, but he looked at the photographs on the wall, at the brass casing in its display case, at Marcus with something resembling respect. Days after the announcement, Marcus received his first threatening message. Anonymous email, no trace. Simple message. Destroy the documentation. Forget what you found. This is your only warning. He deleted it, continued organizing. 2 days later, his shop alarm triggered at 3 in the morning. Security footage showed a figure in dark clothing attempting to pry open the back door. Failed. Left quickly when motion sensors activated exterior lights. Marcus called the police, filed a report, changed the locks, reinforced the security system. But he understood now. Someone didn't want the truth surfacing. Someone with resources. Someone who'd stayed silent for 50 years and intended to keep it that way. He called Deja, told her about the break-in attempt. Her response was calm, expected. They're scared. The ones who ordered the erasures, the ones who signed false death certificates. They have more to lose than we do. Should I be worried? Lock your doors. Keep the documentation backed up in multiple locations. Don't travel alone, but don't stop. The closer we get to the hearing, the more desperate they'll become. That means we're winning. Within a week, Marcus received a certified letter. No law firm letterhead, no identifying information, just a legal threat, interference with national security, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, potential prosecution under espionage statutes. He showed it to a lawyer friend. The man read it, frowned. This isn't from D.O.'d legal. Format's wrong. Language is too aggressive. Someone's trying to scare you. Is it working? Should it be? Marcus thought about his grandfather, about 40 years of silence, about operators erased from history, about truth that deserved telling. No, good. Keep the letter. Might be evidence of obstruction. The threatening messages continued, but Marcus stopped responding. Focused on preparation, statement drafted, evidence organized, timeline memorized. He knew every mission date, every target description, every casualty report. He also discovered something his grandfather had hidden deeper than the rest. A folder marked personal. Inside were notes in Otis Mercer's handwriting. Not mission reports, personal observations. Deja reminds me of my daughter. Same determination, same refusal to accept limitations, same willingness to sacrifice everything for what she believes is right. Clarence carries too much weight. Saw it in his eyes after the village chief mission. Tried to talk to him. He shut down. I worry he's looking for a way out. Just hope he doesn't take anyone with him. Maurice is the heart of the team. Keeps everyone grounded. Makes them laugh when things get dark. If we lose him, we lose more than a medic. We lose hope. Marcus read these observations 3 times. His grandfather hadn't just supplied the program. He'd known these people, cared about them, watched them struggle, tried to help. And when they died, he'd carry that too. Another weight, another secret, another truth that couldn't be spoken. February 14th arrived. Eve of the hearing. Marcus drove to Washington, hotel near Capitol Hill. Couldn't sleep. Kept reviewing his statement. Kept thinking about the weight of speaking truth that had been buried for half a century. He met Deja for breakfast. Small diner 2 blocks from the hearing location. She sat in a corner booth. Coffee already ordered. Looking out the window at early morning pedestrians. You ready? Marcus sat across from her, as I'll ever be. It's not complicated. Tell what you verified, show what you found, let the evidence speak. What if they don't believe the evidence? Then they're not listening, but most of them will be. Most of them want the truth. They're just scared of what it costs. She sipped her coffee, set the cup down precisely, centered on the saucer. I need to tell you something. About tomorrow, about what you might hear. Okay. The missions weren't all defensive. Some were targeted eliminations, political targets, people we were told threatened American interests. Not all the intelligence was accurate. Not all the targets deserved what happened. Mission 23. She looked up, surprised. You know about that? I found your personal notes in the documentation. You refused the shot. Clarence took it instead. Deja's hands tightened around the coffee cup. The village chief. We were told he was coordinating with enemy forces, passing intelligence, setting up ambushes. We observed him for 6 hours. His behavior didn't match the profile. He moved like a civilian, talked like a civilian, greeted children like a grandfather. I requested additional observation time. Denied. Requested target confirmation. Denied. Execute immediately. I refused. Clarence didn't. She paused, looked out the window again. 3 days later, we got new intelligence. The chief had been trying to negotiate safe passage for refugees. The meetings we observed were with humanitarian workers. We killed an innocent man based on faulty intelligence and pressure to show results. Clarence never recovered. Neither did I. But he took it harder, made himself a target 5 months later. I think he wanted to die, wanted to stop carrying the weight. Why tell me this now? Because tomorrow someone will ask if we made mistakes, if we have regrets, if we deserve recognition or prosecution. I need you to understand the answer is complicated. We serve with honor in dishonorable circumstances. We made impossible choices with incomplete information. We carry guilt that won't wash away. But we also saved lives, stopped attacks, protected people who never knew we existed. Both things are true. Both deserve acknowledgement. I understand. Do you? Because once you testify, you're tied to this, to us, to everything we did, right and wrong. You'll carry it too. I already am. Deja nodded, finished her coffee, left money on the table, stood. Then let's go tell the truth. The hearing room was smaller than Marcus expected. Wood-paneled walls, rows of seats for observers, a long table at the front where 5 congresspeople sat, camera crews positioned along the sides, maybe 40 people in attendance. Marcus arrived early, sat in the back, watched people file in, recognized some faces from the photographs. Old men now, 80s, some in wheelchairs, some walking with canes, all wearing pieces of their service, a jacket with unit patches, a cap with faded insignia, visible pride mixed with decades of enforced silence. At 9:15, Deja entered. She wore a simple dark suit, hair pulled back, walked with the same deliberate precision Marcus remembered. But something was different. Her shoulders were straighter, her head higher, like a weight had been lifted. She sat in the front row, did not look around, did not acknowledge anyone, just sat with her hands folded in her lap and waited. The hearing began at 9:30. The committee chair spoke first, a woman in her 60s, Congresswoman Patricia Hayes. She acknowledged the difficulty of the subject matter, acknowledged the decades of silence, acknowledged the sacrifice of operators who served without recognition. Then she called the first witness, retired General Reginald Thompson, 82 years old, moved to the witness table with help from an aide, testified about the strategic necessity of brush fire, the lives saved, the intelligence gathered, the missions accomplished. He spoke for 20 minutes. His voice was strong despite his age. When he finished, he looked directly at the front row, at Deja, nodded once. The second witness was the pilot, Tyrone Williams, Pelican 3, the old man who had visited Marcus's shop. He testified about extraction missions, about operators working in conditions that violated every safety protocol, about professionalism under fire, about a specific mission in February '77 where an operator provided covering fire that saved his entire crew. He did not name Deja, did not need to. Everyone in the room knew who he meant. The third witness was Marcus. He walked to the table, set down the folder containing his documentation, took the oath, sat. The committee chair asked him to state his name in relationship to Operation Brushfire. My name is Marcus Mercer. I own a firearm shop in Tennessee that was operated by my grandfather during the brushfire era. In November of last year, a woman brought a rifle to my shop for appraisal. The rifle bore serial number GX1847-X. Database searches identified it as classified military hardware. The woman identified herself as the operator to whom the rifle was issued. Federal agents arrived within hours and confirmed her identity. I subsequently discovered documentation in my grandfather's files proving his shop served as a supply depot for brushfire operations. The chair asked if he brought physical evidence. Marcus opened the folder, removed the brass casing in its protective case, held it up. This casing was left by the operator. Dated 1974, 7.62 NATO, fired during a mission that is documented in the files my grandfather maintained. He set it on the table, removed the photographs. The crosswind unit in 75, weapons requisitions, mission reports, after-action summaries. Set them all on the table. This is proof that Operation Brushfire existed, that operators served, that they accomplished missions, that they deserve recognition. The committee members examined the evidence, passed documents between them, asked questions about authentication, about chain of custody, about how Marcus knew the documents were genuine, because my grandfather was meticulous, because he knew someday the truth would need proof, because he believed these people mattered. The chair nodded. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. This documentation will be entered into the official record. Marcus returned to his seat. His hands were shaking. Adrenaline and relief mixed together. As he sat down, he noticed something. A man in the back row, mid-70s, expensive suit, CIA lapel pin, watching the proceedings with expression that mixed anger and fear. Marcus didn't recognize him, but something about the man's presence felt wrong, felt threatening. The chair called the final witness, Lieutenant Deja Imani Winters, Crosswind 7. The room went silent. Deja stood, walked to the witness table, moved with that same controlled precision, sat, took the oath. Her voice was steady. The chair spoke carefully. Lieutenant Winters, thank you for your willingness to testify. We understand this is difficult given the circumstances of your service and subsequent erasure from official records. For the record, can you confirm your identity and service designation? My name is Deja Imani Winters. I served as Crosswind 7 in Operation Brushfire from October 1973 to February 1977. I was a sniper. I completed 42 missions, 9 confirmed eliminations, 11 probable, all enemy combatants, all in defense of American personnel. The chair continued, the committee has reviewed declassified mission reports that reference your designation. However, official personnel records list you as killed in a training accident in '76. Can you explain this discrepancy? Deja's expression did not change. When Brushfire was terminated, operators were given 2 options. Face congressional inquiry that would expose operational methods still in use or accept new identities and disappear. I chose disappearance. My death was fabricated to facilitate that transition. Why come forward now? Because the men who made that choice possible are dying. Because their families deserve to know what their service meant. Because I'm tired of being a ghost. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. First sign of emotion Marcus had seen from her. The man in the back row stood, spoke without being recognized. Madam Chair, I must object to these proceedings. Security moved toward him, but the chair raised a hand. Identify yourself, sir. Clayton Briggs, former Deputy Director, Central Intelligence. I ran counterintelligence oversight for Southeast Asian operations, including brush fire. Then you have perspective. We need Mr. Briggs. Please approach the witness table. Briggs walked forward, confident, entitled, stopped beside Deja without looking at her. Madam Chair, Operation Brushfire involved methods still classified. Public exposure risks current operations. Some missions violated international law. Recognition opens the United States to war crimes investigations. The committee members shifted uncomfortably. Legal concerns were valid. Political exposure was real. Deja turned to look at Briggs for the first time. You're worried about war crimes, Mr. Briggs. You signed 67 mission orders. You approved targets. You denied requests for additional observation time. You pressured operators to show results regardless of intelligence quality. Mission 23, August 1976. Cambodian Village Chief. We requested 12 more hours of surveillance. You denied it. Execute immediately, you said. Show results. We killed an innocent man that day. A grandfather trying to save refugees. My teammate carried that guilt until it killed him 5 months later. You want to talk about war crimes? Let's talk about who gave the orders. The room erupted. Not in noise, intention, electric, dangerous. Briggs's face had gone pale. That mission was based on intelligence from multiple sources. Intelligence you never verified. You wanted results. You got them. Now you want to bury the operators who carried out your orders so you don't face accountability. Madam Chair, this woman is making serious allegations without evidence. I have evidence. Deja's voice cut through the room. 67 mission orders signed by you. 32 expedited approvals bypassing normal verification protocols. 14 instances where operators requested additional surveillance time and were denied. All documented. All in the files that were supposed to be destroyed when the program ended. But my team leader kept copies. Personal insurance. When he died, his widow gave them to me. I've had them for 30 years waiting for this moment. She pulled a USB drive from her jacket pocket, set it on the table. Everything is here. Orders, approvals, denials. Communications showing you knew some intelligence was questionable but pushed for action anyway. You wanted promotions. You wanted success statistics. You didn't care about accuracy. Briggs looked at the USB drive like it was a weapon. Those documents are classified. Not anymore. As of this morning, ODD classified all brushfire operational correspondence pursuant to the hearing. It's all public record now, all admissible. The chair took the USB drive. Mr. Briggs, you may want to consult legal counsel. This hearing is about recognizing operators, not prosecuting officials, but what Lieutenant Winters has presented raises serious questions. Briggs turned without responding, walked toward the exit, stopped at the door, looked back at Deja. You just destroyed your own chance at recognition. No committee will honor operators from a program now tied to war crimes allegations. Deja met his eyes. I'm not here for a medal, Mr. Briggs. I'm here for truth. Let the chips fall where they need to. He left. The door closed. The room remained silent. The chair spoke carefully. Lieutenant Winters, what you've presented complicates this hearing significantly. The committee needs time to review these materials. We're calling a recess until tomorrow morning. Before we adjourn, I want to ask you directly, given everything you've revealed about the program's flaws and failures, do you still believe you and your fellow operators deserve recognition? Deja stood, looked at the 17 operators sitting in the front rows. We were 23 years old, 25, 27. We were given orders by people we trusted. We executed those orders to the best of our ability under impossible circumstances. We made mistakes. We carried guilt, but we also saved lives, stopped attacks, protected people who never knew we existed. Do we deserve recognition? I don't know. But we deserve acknowledgement. We deserve to exist. We deserve to have our service recorded, even if that service was complicated. The operators who died deserve more. Clarence Davis deserves his family to know he wasn't weak or cowardly. He was carrying impossible weight. Maurice Williams deserves his brother to know he died trying to save teammates, not in some training accident. Recognition is yours to give or withhold, but existence isn't. We existed. We served. We bled. We died. That's not up for debate. She sat down. One of the old men in the front row stood, raised his hand in salute, held it. Another stood, another salute. Within 30 seconds, every veteran in the room was standing, hands raised, honoring not perfection, but service. Not heroes, but humans who tried their best in circumstances designed to break them. The committee chair stood, the other members followed, not saluting but standing, showing respect. The moment held. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then Deja stood, nodded once to the room, turned and walked out. The hearing adjourned. Marcus sat frozen, watching the veterans lower their hands, watching them sit, watching them wipe their eyes with the backs of their hands. Outside the hearing room, Marcus found Deja standing alone in the hallway. She was looking out a window at the city below, hands clasped behind her back. Military posture even now. That took courage. She did not turn. It was necessary. What happens now? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe the committee decides we're too complicated to honor. Maybe Briggs faces investigation. Maybe it all gets buried again. Do you regret it? Exposing him? No. He should have been exposed 40 years ago. Better late than never. What about recognition? She finally looked at him, smiled, small, genuine. I got what I came for. 17 operators standing together, acknowledged, real. That's worth more than any medal. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you for trusting me. Deja shook it. Her grip was firm. Thank you for believing when it would have been easier not to. The next morning, the committee reconvened, announced they'd reviewed the materials overnight, consulted with DOD Legal, made a decision. The chair read the statement. This committee recognizes the extraordinary service of Operation Brushfire operators under extraordinary circumstances. We acknowledge mistakes were made at command level. We acknowledge operators followed orders they had reason to trust. We acknowledge some missions resulted in unintended casualties. None of this negates the courage required to serve, the sacrifice made, the lives saved through successful operations. Therefore, this committee recommends the Intelligence Star for Valor in clandestine operations be awarded to all brushfire operators living and deceased. We further recommend a memorial be established at Arlington recognizing those who gave their lives. We recommend full declassification of operational records within 5 years. Finally, we recommend investigation into command decisions that led to civilian casualties. Operators should not bear sole responsibility for failures of intelligence and oversight. The room erupted in applause. The veterans stood again, this time not saluting, embracing, crying, releasing 50 years of weight. Deja remained seated, hands folded, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Marcus watched from his seat, felt tears on his own face, understood finally what his grandfather had known. Some truths take 50 years to surface. Some weights take generations to lift. Some silences need breaking, no matter the cost. 3 days later, Marcus received a package from Deja. Inside was a book manuscript, her memoir, handwritten note attached. Publisher wants this by December. Need your forward by November. Here's what I've written so far. Tell me if I'm being too honest or not honest enough. Marcus read it cover to cover. 400 pages, 42 missions described in detail, the good shots and the bad ones, the confirmed kills and the probable ones, the civilian casualty that haunted her and the teammates whose deaths she carried. It was brutal, honest, complicated, perfect. He wrote the foreword in one sitting. My grandfather owned a gun shop in rural Tennessee. I thought that was all he was. A businessman, a veteran, a careful man who kept good records and never talked about the past. Turns out there were depths I never suspected. Depths I couldn't have understood even if he tried to explain. Because some truths are too heavy to share until the moment comes when sharing becomes necessary. That moment came in November when an elderly woman walked into my shop carrying a rust-covered rifle. She asked me to verify what it was. I almost dismissed her, almost laughed, almost sent her away with nothing but condescension. But something made me look, made me clean the serial number, made me search the databases, made me choose curiosity over assumption. What I found changed everything. Not just my understanding of my grandfather, not just my understanding of history, my understanding of what service means, what sacrifice costs, what truth demands. This book tells that truth. Lieutenant Deja Imani Winters tells it in her own words. Complicated, heavy, real. Not a simple story of heroes and villains, but a complex story of human beings making impossible choices in impossible circumstances. Some of those choices were right, some were wrong. All of them mattered. All of them deserve remembering. All of them deserve recognition, even though that recognition comes 50 years late. Read this book. Understand that war is messy, that service is complicated, that people who carry weapons also carry weight, that truth doesn't fit into neat categories. And understand that my grandfather knew all this, preserved evidence when it would have been safer to destroy it, built fail-safes when it would have been easier to forget, trusted that someday someone would ask the right questions and need the right answers. He was right. Someone did ask. Lieutenant Winters asked. And together we made sure the answer was truth instead of silence. The book, published in July, hit bestseller lists immediately, sparked national conversation about covert operations and classified programs and the cost of secrecy. Deja appeared on news programs, gave interviews, spoke at military academies, and always she mentioned Marcus, the grandson who verified the rifle, who preserved the evidence, who testified at the hearing, who helped truth surface after 50 years of burial. Marcus returned to Tennessee after the hearing. The shop felt transformed, not physically, the same walls and counters and displays, but the purpose had shifted, less about commerce, more about preservation. He moved the filing cabinet to a prominent position behind the counter, unlocked it permanently, labeled it Historical Archive Operation Brushfire. Customers could examine the documents, ask questions, learn. The rotary phone stayed on the wall. A small placard beneath it explained its significance. Emergency contact line for Operation Brushfire, inactive from 1977 to 2024, rang once to notify next generation of declassification. The photographs expanded. Images from the hearing, from Arlington Memorial Service, from Deja's book tour, from operator reunions. 3 months after the hearing, a young woman entered. Early 20s, nervous, carried a worn duffel bag. My grandmother passed away last month. She told me if I ever needed money, I should bring this to someone who'd understand what it meant. She wrote down this address. She pulled out an M1911 pistol, tarnished, grip worn smooth, serial number barely visible. Marcus didn't dismiss it. He reached for the brass brush and solvent. Let me take a look. As he cleaned the serial number, the woman watched. Your grandfather did this too. Yes. And it taught me that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden under rust and time and silence. Sometimes you have to look carefully to find what matters. The serial emerged. Standard military issue. 1943, World War II service based on wear patterns. This belonged to someone who served, someone who carried it through something difficult. That makes it valuable regardless of what collectors might pay. The woman relaxed. How much is it worth? To a collector, maybe $800. To you, much more. This is your family's history. Your grandmother wanted you to have it. I'd recommend keeping it. Let it remind you where you came from. She smiled through tears. Thank you. After she left, Marcus stood at the counter looking at the space around him. Photographs on walls, archive cabinet documenting truth, brass casing displayed, evidence preserved. The shop had become what his grandfather intended, a place where hidden stories surfaced, where dismissed things found value, where truth mattered more than convenience. At 5:47, he began closing. Same routine but different purpose. Less arrogance, more responsibility. He moved through the space understanding he was custodian of something larger than himself. Before leaving, he stood at the photograph wall, looked at Deja at the museum dedication, at the crosswind unit in the jungle, at the memorial service at Arlington. 17 operators, 17 lives erased, then restored. 17 people who served in silence and were finally honored in light. Marcus picked up the brass casing, turned it over, 7.62 NATO, 1974. Fired 50 years ago, still carrying weight, still telling truth. He set it back carefully, turned off the lights, locked the door. Outside, Tennessee evenings settled into darkness, stars emerging, highway quiet, the world continuing around the small shop that had become memorial. Marcus sat in his truck before starting the engine, looked back at the building, at dark windows, at the sign reading Mercer and Sons Firearms. 3 generations, 3 purposes, supply depot, gun shop, memorial. His phone buzzed. Message from Deja. Museum exhibit getting 25,000 visitors monthly. Letters arriving daily from families thanking us for bringing their loved ones back from erasure. Your grandfather's workbench is centerpiece of new interactive display. People touch it, connect with history. Thank you for everything. Marcus typed back, honor was mine. Thank you for trusting me with truth. He drove home thinking about rust-covered rifles and hidden archives and the courage required to surface after decades underwater. Thinking about his grandfather's careful planning, about operators who served without recognition, about truth that refused to stay buried. The next morning at 5:47, Marcus unlocked the shop. Same routine, same timing. But when he looked at the space, he saw purpose fulfilled. Mission accomplished. Legacy honored. A customer arrived at 9, brought an old rifle for appraisal. It looked rough, worn, possibly worthless. Marcus didn't laugh, didn't dismiss. He picked it up carefully, examined it thoroughly, asked questions, listened to the story, because he'd learned. Value hides in unexpected places. History lives in objects people overlook. Truth deserves careful examination before judgment. The rifle turned out to be Korean War issue, carried by the customer's uncle through Chosin Reservoir. 30 below zero, surrounded, outnumbered, somehow survived. Not worth much monetarily, priceless historically. Marcus helped the customer understand both values. Recommended preservation, offered to connect them with veteran organizations, made sure another story didn't get lost. This became his work, his calling, verifying history, preserving truth, honoring service even when that service was complicated. The brass casing stayed in its case. Reminder of where this started. Reminder that some bullets travel 50 years before hitting target. Some truths wait lifetimes before finding moment. Deja visited twice more that year. Once for book signing that drew 400 people, once privately to see the space and remember. During the private visit, she stood at the counter where she'd first placed the rifle. Feels like a lifetime ago. Feels like yesterday. Both probably true. She smiled. You know what I remember most? Your face when you cleaned that serial number. The exact moment assumption shifted to recognition. The exact moment you chose to believe instead of dismiss. That changed everything. For both of us. Standing here making you verify that rifle, that was point of no return. After that, there was no going back. Had to see it through. Any regrets about surfacing, about the cost, sometimes. I think about Clarence and Maurice, about whether they'd want this exposure, about whether I'm honoring them or using them. You're honoring them, giving them back their names, their service, their humanity. That's not using, that's remembering. Deja nodded, looked around the transformed space. Your grandfather built something lasting here, not just business, foundation, integrity, commitment to truth. You inherited all of it, still learning what it means, aren't we all? They stood together in comfortable silence, two people connected by rust-covered rifle and serial number that shouldn't exist, connected by choice to verify instead of dismiss, connected by commitment to truth over convenience. The bell chimed. Another customer entered. Young man, early 20s, carried something wrapped in cloth. Marcus recognized the signs. Family history, seeking verification, hoping old possession mattered. He smiled. Professional, welcoming, ready. How can I help you? The cycle continued. Different people, different stories, different objects carrying different weights. Same fundamental truth. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes you have to look carefully to find what matters. 3 years after the Smithsonian exhibition opened, Marcus received a call from the museum director. They wanted to expand the brush fire display, add interactive component, let visitors engage with mission simulations. They also wanted permanent installation. His grandfather's workbench from the shop, the actual surface where weapons were prepared, where ammunition was counted, where supplies were organized before deployment. Marcus agreed immediately, arranged transport, watched as worn wood surface was carefully crated and shipped, stood in empty space where it had been, and felt both loss and rightness. The bench belonged in the museum, belonged in context, belonged where it could teach. He replaced it with something simpler, modern, functional, but mounted placard on wall explaining what had been there, explaining connection, explaining history. The shop continued evolving, became destination. People made pilgrimages, veterans paying respects, historians researching covert operations, students writing papers on classified programs. Marcus handled each visitor carefully, answered questions, shared documents, preserved stories, became curator of truth his grandfather had trusted him to protect. On the 4th anniversary of that November day, Marcus closed early, drove to cemetery where his grandfather was buried, stood at grave, looked at simple headstone. Otis Mercer, devoted husband and father, served with honor. Marcus had added line after learning truth, requested permission from cemetery board, paid for engraving himself, supply coordinator Operation Brushfire, preserved truth when others demanded silence. He stood until sunset, thinking about inheritance, about responsibility, about weight carried alone, about trust placed in future generations. Finally, he spoke aloud. I understand now. Why you kept the files, why you built the fail-safe, why you trusted I'd do the right thing, even though you couldn't tell me what that was. You were right, I did, and I'll keep doing it for as long as it matters, for as long as truth needs protecting, for as long as witnesses are needed. Thank you for the burden. Thank you for the honor. Thank you for believing I could carry what you carried. He placed hand on headstone, felt cold marble, felt connection across death and time, felt purpose. Then he walked back to his truck, drove home through gathering darkness, made notes for tomorrow, answered emails from researchers, prepared for another day of being custodian of truth. The brass casing still sat in its display case, 7.62 NATO, 1974. Physical proof that some bullets traveled decades before hitting target. Some truths wait lifetimes before finding moment. Marcus looked at it daily. Reminder of where this started. Reminder it wasn't finished. Would never be finished. Because truth isn't destination, it's practice. Discipline, commitment renewed daily. He'd inherited gun shop, built memorial, became part of something larger than himself. Part of story that began before him and would continue after him. Part of truth that demanded preservation. Part of witness that refused silence. Some people spend lives searching for purpose. Marcus found his in rust-covered rifle and serial number that officially didn't exist. An elderly woman who'd been dead 49 years. In grandfather who'd known someday truth would matter. And it did matter. More than he'd understood that November morning. More than he could have imagined when he cleaned that serial number. More than he could adequately express even now. But he tried every day, through preservation, through education, through bearing witness, through refusing to let silence be final answer. Because Deja had been right. World rarely recognizes what's truly valuable. But that doesn't mean it isn't there. Hidden, waiting, ready to surface when moment comes. And when it surfaces, someone needs to be there, ready to verify, ready to document, ready to carry weight, ready to tell truth. Marcus was that someone, chosen by circumstances he didn't create, accepted through choices he made, continued through commitment renewed daily. Shop lights went dark except one over photograph wall. Let images stay visible in darkness. Crosswind 7 at 23, crosswind 7 at 78, young and old, hidden and revealed, ghost and human, all same person, all equally real. Tomorrow museum would open. Thousands would see rifle, read story, learn names, understand Operation Brushfire existed, that Deja Amani Winters existed, that Clarence Davis and Maurice Williams existed, that 17 operators served in silence and deserved a recognition. Tonight, Marcus stood alone in the grandfather's shop, surrounded by evidence of that truth. Understanding some stories take 50 years to tell, not because they're complicated, but because they're heavy. Not because facts are unclear, but because weight is unbearable. And sometimes greatest service is simply holding weight until moment comes when it can finally be set down. Work would continue, truth would endure, witnesses would remember. That was enough. Outside rain began falling, soft at first and harder, drumming on roof, washing streets, renewing earth. Marcus locked door, walked to truck, sat inside listening to rain, thinking about journey from November to now, from rust-covered rifle to museum exhibition, from classified serial number to public acknowledgement, from erased operator to honored veteran. All of it connected, all of it necessary, all of it part of larger truth about service and sacrifice and the cost of silence. He started engine, turned on wipers, drove through rain toward home, toward rest, toward tomorrow when work would begin again. Because truth never sleeps, never stops demanding attention, never releases those who carry it. Marcus understood that now, accepted it, embraced it. He was witness, guardian, curator, keeper of stories that refused to stay buried. And he would continue, for as long as breath remained, for as long as memory mattered, for as long as truth deserved telling. Some bullets travel 50 years before hitting target. Some truths wait lifetimes before finding moment. Some people live entire existences in shadow before stepping into light. This was one of those truths, one of those moments, one of those lives. And Marcus Mercer had been there to witness it all. That was his inheritance, his purpose, his honor, and he carried it gladly into whatever came next.